She looked into my eyes that night, and she knew. A mother always knows. No matter how calm my voice sounded, no matter how carefully I hid the tremble in my tone, she could read the storm behind my silence. Her gaze was soft, but her heart was roaring. Still, she didn't ask. She didn't accuse. She didn't even sigh. She just smiled, that tired, gentle smile that said, "I already know, my child." I lied. I lied because I didn't want to disappoint her. Because I thought maybe, if I said what she wanted to hear, she'd rest a little easier. But mothers, they don't rest on lies. They rest only when their children are safe. When I turned away, my eyes filled with guilt, but her arms found me before my tears did. She pulled me close, not to question, not to correct, but to protect. Her hug was different than night. It wasn't just warm. It was forgiveness before confession, love before truth, and mercy before repentance. I could feel her heartbeat against my cheek, steady, slow, infinite. It whispered, "I know you're lying, my son, but I also know why." And in that moment, I realized how pure her love was, how it didn't demand honesty to stay pure. It stayed, because love that comes from a mother's soul doesn't need proof, it just is. Her fingers brushed through my hair, and I felt smaller than I had in years. A king in the world, but a child again in her arms. She said nothing, but her silence spoke louder than any sermon. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved." And I wanted to cry. Not because she caught my lie, but because she chose love over pride. She could have scolded me. She could have turned away. But instead, she became my home again. Every breath I took in that embrace felt like a prayer answered. Every tear that fell was met with a hand that wiped it before it could reach my chin. I thought I was protecting her from pain, but she was protecting me from guilt. I thought I was hiding the truth, but she was showing me what truth really was. Truth isn't the words we speak. It's the love we refuse to break, even when we're hurting. That night I learned, a mother's love doesn't wait for apologies. It doesn't count mistakes. It just opens its arms wider, as if to say, "Even if you lie, my child, I will love you until the lie becomes truth." Her hug became my confession. Her silence became my forgiveness. And her love, it became my redemption. I closed my eyes in her arms and realized something the world often forgets. No prayer reaches heaven faster than the heartbeat of a mother forgiving her child. And as she held me, I felt it. A warmth not of this world. A love that could heal what time could not. She didn't say, "I forgive you." She didn't need to. Her touch said it 1,000 times over. That night, I understood. My lie was small, but her love was endless. She didn't want truth from me. She wanted peace for me. And somehow, in her arms, I found both. Morning came slowly that day. The sun tiptoed through the curtains, and I woke to the faint sound of her humming in the kitchen. That same gentle hum she used to sing when I was a child, when she thought I was asleep, but I always listened, because her voice was softer than dreams. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of last night's lie. Her hug still lingered on my shoulders, like a shawl of mercy. How could she forgive me so silently? How could love be so loud without saying a word? I got up, walked slowly toward her. The aroma of tea filled the room. The same old cup, the same old hand pouring it. But this morning, those hands looked older, thinner, lined with stories I had never stopped to read. She turned around, smiled again, and said in that calm voice that always broke my walls, "You didn't sleep well, did you?" And I froze. Because she wasn't asking, she was knowing. I nodded, pretending I was fine. She didn't push, she never did. Instead, She handed me the cup, and her fingers brushed against mine. Warm, trembling, real. The kind of warmth that says, "I've been hurt too, but I still choose to love." I wanted to confess. Every word was burning inside me. But before I could speak, she sat down and started talking about the simplest things. The weather, the neighbor's new child, the bird that built a nest near our window. She made the world sound safe again, even when mine was falling apart. As she talked, I noticed something. Her hands never stopped moving. They folded a napkin, fixed the edge of the tablecloth, adjusted my collar, brushed invisible dust from my sleeve. It was as if those hands were built only to make everything around them better. Those hands had fed me, held me when I was sick, covered my tears when I failed, and wiped my face before my first school exam. Those hands never asked for rest. They only knew how to give. And I thought, the world might call her ordinary, but in her hands lived the power to heal a lifetime of mistakes. I stared at her quietly, and she caught me looking. She smiled again, that same knowing smile. She knew I was sorry, not just for the lie, but for every time I took her love for granted. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "You don't have to tell me everything, my child. I just need to know that you'll be all right." Her words broke me more than any scolding ever could, because she wasn't asking for truth. She was asking for peace. And I realized, that's all a mother ever wants. To see her child safe, happy, alive. I took her hand then. Those same hands that once taught me how to hold a pencil, how to tie my shoes, how to pray. They felt fragile now, like paper that's been folded too many times, but still strong enough to hold my whole world together. I whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama." Her fingers tightened slightly around mine. She didn't ask, "For what?" She didn't need to. Her eyes said, "It's okay, my son." I knew, and at that moment, I understood the deepest truth in life. Sometimes love means letting someone lie, because you can see the fear behind their words, and you choose comfort over confrontation. She poured me another cup of tea, and as we sat there in silence, the morning light kissed her hair like a crown. I realized she didn't need anyone to call her a queen. She already ruled my heart, not with power, but with patience. The world outside could fall apart, but as long as those hands were near, I knew I'd always find my way home. Dubbed because a mother doesn't need truth to love you. She loves you until you become truth again. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The silence of our home was too deep. Not empty, but full of unspoken love. I could still hear her footsteps echoing softly from the kitchen. The clinking of dishes, the gentle rhythm of her life. And in that silence, I realized something. It wasn't that she didn't know how to confront me. It was that she chose not to. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was forgiveness wrapped in dignity. I lay there thinking about every time I had shouted. Every time I had walked away. Every time I had thought she didn't understand. But she always did. She just never said it. Because mothers don't argue to win. They stay silent to protect love. I remembered once when I was younger. I came home angry. Furious at the world, at my failures. At the life that didn't go my way. I said words no child should ever say. Cruel words. Sharp words. And she didn't reply. She just stood there. Eyes filled with tears she didn't want me to see. Hands still stirring the pot on the stove. Because dinner still needed to be made. That night, she served me food anyway. And when I refused to eat, she quietly placed it on the table. And said, "It'll still be warm when you're ready." That was her way of saying, "I forgive you." That was her silence speaking louder than any sermon. Now, as I sat there in the same kitchen years later, I watched her hum again. The same tune, the same rhythm. But her face had changed. Lines had deepened. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed with time. Yet the kindness remained untouched. Her silence now wasn't just forgiveness. It was wisdom. She had seen too much of life to waste words. She had loved enough to know that sometimes words only make wounds deeper. She turned to me and smiled. No questions. No reminders. Just that one eternal expression. That said, "You're still my child." And I broke again. Because how do you repay a love that never demanded anything back? How do you apologize to someone who never even blamed you? I wanted to say something, anything. But she just reached out, wiped a tear from my cheek, and whispered, "Don't cry. You'll make me cry too." Her voice trembled, and for a second, I saw her not as my mother, but as a woman who had carried pain quietly, who had hidden her own dreams, so mine could come true. She wasn't just strong. She was sacred. In that moment, I realized the greatest truth of all. Mothers don't live for themselves. They live through their children. In their laughter, in their mistakes, in their lies, and in their eventual understanding. That night, I didn't try to hide anything anymore. I sat beside her and said, "I know you knew, Mama." She smiled faintly and nodded. "Of course I did," she said. Then she added something that burned into my heart forever. "But if you had told me the truth then, you would have carried shame. Now you only carry love. That's all I ever wanted for you." And that's when I finally understood why her silence was so powerful. Because it wasn't the silence of distance. It was the silence of understanding. She didn't want explanations. She wanted healing. And by not speaking, she allowed me to hear my own guilt louder, until it turned into change. Her silence taught me more than her words ever could. It taught me patience, humility, and how to love someone without expecting perfection. That night, I hugged her tightly. Not as a child needing forgiveness, but as a son finally understanding the language of love she'd spoken all her life, the language of silence. And when I whispered, "I love you, Mama," she didn't reply. She just smiled through tears. And that silence said everything I needed to hear. Crescent moon, because sometimes silence is not the absence of love. It's love in its purest, most patient form. It was early morning. The kind of dawn that carried both peace and pain. The light entered softly through the curtains. But in that golden glow, I saw something I had never seen before. My mother crying? She thought I was asleep. She sat by the window, hands folded, eyes closed, murmuring prayers that cracked between breaths. Her shoulders trembled slightly, and in her lap was that old scarf, the one she always used to wipe my tears when I was a child. But now, it was wet with her own. For a moment, I couldn't move. It felt like the earth had stopped turning, as if the universe itself was watching this sacred pain unfold. She wasn't crying for herself. No, I knew her heart. She was crying for me. For every time I had walked away. For every lie I had told. For every mistake she saw coming but couldn't stop. Mothers don't cry because they're weak. They cry because they've been strong for too long. And that morning, her tears carried every unspoken word she had kept buried for years. I wanted to run to her, to fall to my knees and say, "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." But guilt froze me. It wrapped chains around my chest. I just stood there, watching the only woman who ever loved me unconditionally break quietly, and even then, gracefully. When she finally looked up, she wiped her face quickly, as if afraid I might see her pain. She smiled, the same soft smile she always wore, and said, "Good morning, my son." How could she smile like that? When I knew she was drowning inside? That smile was her armor. A shield she had crafted from years of sacrifice. I walked toward her, my throat tight with emotion, and I asked softly, "Mama, why are you crying?" She looked away, then said the words that broke me forever. "Sometimes the heart just remembers too much." I sat beside her, and for the first time in years, I held her hand like a child again. Her fingers were thinner now, her warmth still the same. I wanted to take her pain away, but I knew she didn't want comfort. She just wanted me to understand. She said, "You know, when you were small, you used to come to me and lie about silly things. You'd say you didn't break the cup, even when I saw it in your hands. And I would hug you anyway, because I didn't care about the cup. I cared about your heart." Her voice softened. "But now you're grown, and your lies hurt differently. They hide pain, not play. They hide fear, not mischief. And I can't hug the pain away anymore." Her eyes glistened again, and my heart cracked like glass. I fell at her feet, the place where every child finds peace, and whispered, "Mama, I don't deserve your love." She cupped my face with trembling hands, looked deep into my eyes, and said, "Then earn it, my son, not by being perfect, but by being honest." That one sentence became my redemption. Her tears weren't punishment. They were prayer. A prayer that I would finally come home to truth. And that day, I did. I confessed everything. Every lie. Every excuse. Every reason I had hurt her. I told her I was ashamed. And she, even in her pain, smiled again and whispered, "I already forgave you before you spoke." Those words, they didn't just heal me. They changed me. That day I saw her tears. I realized love isn't proven by grand gestures, but by gentle forgiveness that asks for nothing. Her tears were holy, a baptism for my broken soul. From that morning on, I made a promise that I would never give her a reason to cry for me again. And if she ever did, it would only be tears of pride, not pain. Tulip, because a mother's tears are not weakness. They are the purest truth this world will ever know. That evening, the sky was heavy with memories. Clouds drifted like old thoughts, and the air smelled faintly of rain, like the scent of tears that never reached the ground. My mother was sitting in her favorite chair, the one near the window where she used to pray at sunset. Her hands were folded in her lap, rosary beads sliding gently between her fingers, her lips moving in silent prayer. And for the first time in a long time, I saw peace resting on her face. It wasn't the peace of someone who had never suffered, but the peace of someone who had loved more than life itself, and survived it all. I walked slowly toward her. This time, I didn't come with excuses. I didn't come with guilt or lies. I came with a heart she could finally recognize. Broken, but honest. She looked up and smiled. And I swear, that smile could have lit the darkest corners of heaven. It was gentle, but full of meaning. Like she already knew why I was there. I knelt beside her, my hands trembling as I reached for hers. Her fingers were cold, yet her touch still carried warmth enough to melt years of distance. I said softly, "Mama, today, I don't want to say sorry. I just want to say thank you." Her eyes glistened again. She tilted her head slightly, and in that moment, I saw the same woman who once held me when I was too small to walk. The same arms that protected me from storms. The same soul that forgave me before I even knew I was wrong. I continued, "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for loving me even when I made it hard to love me. And thank you for hugging me that day when you knew I was lying." Her smile trembled. She said, A mother doesn't stop loving because her child lies. She loves more because she knows the lie is just fear in disguise. And I broke completely. All the strength I had built, all the walls I had raised, collapsed into her lap. I wept like a child again. But this time, she didn't need to say a word. She just pulled me close, the same way she used to when I scraped my knees or failed my tests, and whispered, "Shh, I'm here. I've always been here." Her hug felt like home. It wasn't just arms around me. It was forgiveness, warmth, and eternity all at once. And in that moment, I finally understood what love really means. It's not about being right. It's not about being perfect. It's about never giving up on someone, no matter how many times they fall. Her heart was a kingdom, and I was its only heir. But unlike other kings, my crown was her blessing, and my throne was her lap. I whispered, "Mama, I promise I'll make you proud." She smiled faintly and said, "You already have, by coming back." Then she rested her head back, and I just sat there, holding her hand, watching the sun set one last time through the same window, where she had waited for me all those years. And when she fell silent, I didn't panic, because for the first time, I wasn't afraid of her silence. I knew now what it meant. It meant peace. Her love didn't end that day. It simply changed form. Now it lives in my prayers, in the way I treat others, in the way I forgive, and in every hug I give. Because she taught me how powerful one hug can be. She taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. That truth isn't spoken in anger. It's whispered in forgiveness. And that even when you lie, a mother's heart already knows the truth. So if you ever see your mother smile through your mistakes, if you ever feel her hands tremble when she forgives you, know this: you've just been blessed by the purest form of love this world will ever hold. And if you're lucky enough to still have her, hug her tonight. Don't wait for her silence to teach you what her words already meant all along. Because one day, you'll look at that empty chair by the window and realize her hug was never ordinary. It was heaven's first mercy, sent to remind you that even when you lied, someone loved you enough to hold you closer anyway. Rose. My mother knew I was lying, but she hugged me anyway. Not just a memory, but the definition of unconditional love. Broken heart.